Hi, this is Erica Smith, and this is my PowerPoint on constructivism. First, what is constructivism? It's basically a theory of learning and it's inquiry education, more specifically from one of the readings that we had, which was on Concept in the Classroom, a website from 13.org. It states that it is a theory about how people learn and that people construct their own understanding and knowledge of the world through experiencing things and reflecting on those experiences. But how does it look in the classroom? Well, first and foremost, it is problem-based learning. It's using experiments or real-world problems that need solving to create more knowledge and then reflecting on that and talking about the process that's taking place while you are working through it and helping the students to change their understanding. So the reflection on their learning process is not just them reflecting, but it's actually them having a dialogue with their peers and having discussion to really understand the change that's taking place in their knowledge base that they can take further with them in life. And then the teachers are constantly assessing the students through this, and with them having the discussions about the process of learning that's taking place, it allows them to become more expert learners. The classroom is also different from that of a traditional classroom because instead of the curriculum going from parts to wholes, it goes from a whole to a part. It's also interactive learning, so the students are really working with each other. They're having a dialogue. They're learning from each other. Their ideas are becoming more complex, and they're integrating more information each time they're reflecting and discussing with each other the processes that's taking place in them trying to solve their problem. The teacher and the students hold dialogue, so it's very much more of the learning being in the hands of the students and the students being active participant of their learning, and the teacher merely facilitating the educational environment for them to be able to do that, to raise questions, to answer the questions, to find solutions, to expand their own knowledge rather than the teacher just depositing information into them, which gives the students more power and control over their learning. The teacher also assesses the learning in various ways, and the students have a say-so in the way that they are being assessed. So that could be done through presentations, through observations, through the students' work production, or even through the traditional tests. Collaborative and cooperative partners and groups is very important. They have the academic discussions and dialogue that's going on. And, even them hearing that language that's being used by students that may be of higher learning will help them to access those higher order thinking skills that they need. The teacher is just there to help the student reach new knowledge. So Vygotsky, how was he a constructivist? Well, he had his theory of sociocultural development. In his theory argues that the social interaction precedes development and that the consciousness and cognition are the end product of socialization and social behavior. And that's actually from one of our videos on Vygotsky's social development theory. And he believed that there were several different factors that played a role in this. First, there is the more knowledgeable other, which is also known as the MKO. This would be anyone who has a higher understanding or a greater understanding and a higher ability level than the learner, which in this case will be the student and the teacher, since I am a teacher in the classroom. So the teacher merely is like a tutor to the student or a mentor in such a way. Then we have the zone of proximal development. And that's where the students' learning is taking place depending on their level of knowledge and understanding. When they are struggling and need a lot of help, when they can't access the curriculum on their own, that is much farther away from them than something that would be easier to them. Tony Harlan states in his article, Vygotsky, Zone of Proximal Development and Problem-Based Learning through his action research, he said that the problem-based learning allows students to move through their own zone of proximal development, and that Vygotsky's constructivism, the way for learning to occur is through collaborative problem solving. So again, we go back to that problem solving platform that constructivism has. And then finally, we have the, let me go back to the social cultural development. The social interaction that connects with the the social interaction that connects with the cognitive development and higher order thinking skills is what allows them to progress through that zone of proximal development. So initially the students would have, or the learner would have, elementary mental functions. And through video number 3, which is Vygotsky's social cultural development, the individual states the 4 different mental functions, which is attention, sensation, perception, and memory. And that through those interactions with socio-cultural interactions, we then are able to access higher mental functions, which allows us to have independent learning and thinking. Another factor that plays a role in the collaborative dialogue. And then we go to language, and Vygotsky really focused, I apologize that I keep saying his name incorrectly, but Vygotsky really emphasized language and our culture surrounding the development of our language, and there being a private and internal speech, and how children speak out loud much more than adults do, and they are going through whatever their processes they're going through in their mind out loud. But their language is being developed through their social interaction. So the next question for the outline was, what extent is your pedagogy classroom practice constructivism? So I do a lot of collaborative groups, which allows for a lot of dialogue in science. Science is very much hands-on. In writing, that's the main subject that I teach, but students are always given an article to write about, whether it's opinion, informative, or even narrative. They have to incorporate sources, references into their writing. So we always do multiple reads of an article. We discuss the article. We make connections to the article. We apply it to our own life when it's applicable, so that the students can gain more meaning and understanding and have various exposures to the article in order to strengthen their understanding of it. Active learning, I would say much more in science than writing. I use a program called Mystery Science. So they do a great job of giving students real world examples and videos, making the students have hands-on activities and experiments that allow them to work through it. It could be more problem-based learning, definitely, but it's still hands-on and active. We do a lot of reflection in our classroom. The students have goals that they set for writing. Our goal setting is primarily for writing, but then they also have overall goal each trimester, which could be behavior or any subject that they want. And we constantly go back, and not constantly, but several times a month we go back and reflect on our goals to see what progress we're making towards it. And then we have conferences. So we actually have student-led conferences in November instead of having parent-teacher conferences, where the students present their work and their grades to their parents and reflect on those aspects, and having a conversation with their parents about why they got that grade, what they did well, what they did not do well, what their goal is for the next trimester, and how they plan to achieve that goal. And then I, being their teacher and being with them every day, meet with them regularly to monitor their progress and to help them work through any issues they may have. But they ultimately take control of the conference and let me know what they need and where they're going. revisions that I can make in my classroom for it to become a more constructivism classroom is definitely problem-based learning with primarily teaching writing. I kind of find it difficult to do that because truthfully, because of state testing, there's such an emphasis on writing that I put more focus on that. So I think that maybe in science, having problem-based learning, maybe a project they could take home, um, deepening the content of cooperative and collaborative groups to allow students more time or more complex issues or more complex ideas to even just strengthen their, increase the academic vocabulary and have them have more critical thinking skills that they have to apply. And then implementing more small groups. So this is what I thought about for zone of proximal development. It mentions somewhere in one of the resources about the learning tasks needing to be basically just right, like similar to the woman with the three bears. You know, when you think of the story with the three bears, they kept saying the Goldilocks and Three Bears. Goldilocks kept saying, "Oh, this was just right." So in the second video that we had to watch, which was just titled "Zone of Proximal Development," the individual mentioned the learning tasks not being too easy because then it makes the kids bored, but then them not being too hard because it gets them frustrated. So with all the English language learners that I have, the students that are just more lower performing and struggling in writing, and having so many students in my classroom, it makes it really very difficult to do small groups. I do more one-on-one, but then I can't get through as many students in one class period. So I would really like to do that more. And that is it. That was a very long presentation, but I hope that you found it insightful and helpful. Have a good night.